Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
a podcast for parents, college counselors, students, and anyone who wants a weekly deep dive into the world of college admissions.
My name is Lynda, and I'm originally from Michigan, now living in the St. Louis metro area. I'm a college coach with School Match for You and have a daughter at University of Chicago.
I'm Lisa, and I'm a clinical psychologist and college counselor. I have a daughter in college, a daughter in high school, and a son in middle school. After 30 years in Chicago, we recently moved to North Carolina.
My name is Mark. I'm a college coach in Atlanta and the parent of two daughters. Karis, a graduate of Davidson College, and she is the founder of the Spanish tutoring company, SpanishHelpToday.com. And Joy has a bachelor's degree from the University of Georgia and a master's degree from North Carolina State University. She works in private practice in Raleigh as a mental health therapist. And I'm so blessed to be able to work alongside both my beautiful daughters at School Match for You, a college counseling firm that I founded in 2010. Good morning, friends. Got two quick updates for you, a few housekeeping matters, and then something brand new. I don't remember us ever doing this before. I think you're going to like it. We'll see. If it works, then we'll come back to this format again. If it's a bust, then we'll move on. We try different things. Some work, some don't. And then, of course, we'll have the final segment of Lynda's interview with Campbell on understanding Zeemee. But this has been a great week for me. And for those of you who missed last week's episode, let me say it again. Happy New Year's 2024 is here. But I'm coming off 7 days with my brother from Denver. You know, don't get 7 days as an adult with your sibling. You just kind of don't. But we just kind of worked out that way. He's in high-level 3D sales. He sells to like Fortune 100 companies like Lockheed Martin and Northrop and those kinds of companies. And so he could set his own schedule a little bit. And, we're trying to do a tradition where he comes in with his son and we hang out, watch football, do all that fun stuff. His son had to work, but it was a great week for me. But listen, let's get to an update. So January 6th means it is exactly 5 months since I started my plan to lose 80 pounds. I started this right away on the 6th of August. And so from the 6th of August to September, I lost 10. And from September 6th to October 6th, I lost 5. And October 6th to November 6th, I lost 5. November 6th to December 6th, I lost 2. Drum roll, please. December 6th to January 6th, I lost 2 again. So I've lost 24 pounds. I have 56 to go. And I'm so encouraged because there's several reasons why I'm encouraged. Like the holidays a challenge for me. It's just so much baked goods and treats and sweets, and you get out of your routine. And I've been derailed before by that whole Thanksgiving through Christmas season. And here's the other reason. I started doing the math, and I said, okay, I got to lose 56 pounds. I want to make this more concrete. Instead of, go with the flow. It is what it is. You lose what you lose. No. Time to step up my accountability game. Why don't I try to lose 56 pounds in 51 weeks? Why don't I make it my goal to hit my goal in 2024? Then I start doing the math. So 24 pounds in 5 weeks is 4.8 pounds a week. So then I looked at it, okay, if I were to lose 4.8 pounds a month. So if I were to lose 4.8 pounds a month from January 2024 all the way through the end of December, what would that be? Do you know it was exactly 56 pounds? So I just have to keep doing what I'm doing. 4.8 pounds a month. Hit my goal in 2024. And I'm super energized. I'll be back February 6th to give you an update. Hopefully I'm inspiring those who are in the battle. I'm learning to not be debilitated by my own perfectionism. I have been derailed by my perfectionism is in the past. I've said, I tried, did make it. So go back, grab the bag of potato chips, go get the French fries, go eat the cheese Doritos, eat the fudge, whatever. Tried, didn't make it. So, hey, move on. It was a nice, good effort. What I'm learning to do is say, you know what? if I have a couple bad days or whatever, go with the flow. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And I just feel like I can sustain it. So I know this is going to sound crazy. I'm actually happiest about November and December when I lost 2 pounds in each of those 2 months. More so than you come out of the gate and you got all that motivation, all that fire in your belly, and all that zeal, all that alacrity. Yeah, but can you sustain it? So we'll see. I'm going to update you once a month, and hopefully others in the journey will keep on keeping on. All right, second announcement. This is a request. So I'm definitely going to be at a National Association of College Admissions Counselors if God gives me the health and strength to do it. That's in Los Angeles, September 26th through 28th. And most of our counselors, if not all, should be there. Susan usually goes. Julia usually goes. Already talking with Lynda and Lisa about going. And Vince lives there. And I'm planning on staying in California for at least a week, maybe 10 days. Do a bunch of college visits, meet a bunch of families I'm working with out there. And I would love for us to do a gathering, your college bound kid gathering, because we'll have more counselors there than the one we're going to do on March 23rd in Durham, North Carolina, just because it's our national conference. And so I used to work with a college counselor when I worked at KIPP, the Knowledge is Power Program, CBO, from South Carolina. And, she had all these little South Carolina phrases that were like country and it made me laugh, but they were profound. So one that I've adopted is when she used to say, Mark, closed mouths don't get fed. Closed mouths don't get fed, meaning speak up, speak your truth. So this is when I'm speaking up and saying, if there's someone in the greater LA area that would be interested in hosting us, reach out. Shoot me a text at 404-664-4340. Some people have access to clubhouses, country clubs, restaurants, just different type of arrangements. We don't have it in our budget to come into LA and rent out some place where we can meet everybody, but we know it's a big center for our listeners. And I'm just throwing it out there because closed mouths don't get fed. And there may be someone there who'd be interested in hosting. And then we can start talking about details as we still have 8 months to plan and put that together. But those are my two announcements for today. So for the episode, the content, Susan and I, going back now since 2000 and probably the very end of 2002, the start of 2003, when we were working together at the Westtown School, Quaker boarding school outside of Philly, we'd have these long, awesome conversations just about college admissions. And I have these with Julia too, where they go an hour and they've hit 2 hours on a couple occasions. And on multiple times, I've had this thought pop in my head since they've joined the podcast team. Like, man, I wish we had recorded that. Snap. And so, Susan and I we kicked off what was going to be, an episode. And then we just kind of got really off topic and we just started talking. And I just let the recording go. And that's what you're going to hear today. And you're going to hear it next week too. Just Susan and I talking about college admissions. Totally off the cuff. Just talking, not even like there's a microphone around. And if you guys like it, probably do some more of that stuff, because I feel like some of my best conversations are just conversations, that we've had. And I've had them with other co-hosts on our team as well. So, your feedback's always welcome, because sometimes what I think may be good may not be, or what I think may not be great may be. So, so this is going to be part 1 of 2. Susan and I just bouncing around, talking about a whole bunch of different college admission topics. My sense is something you'll find valuable, but guess what? You're the judge, not me. So listen and enjoy. Friends, I'm here with Susan, and we're all warmed up. We've had our 35-minute college admissions talk already. Hi, Susan.
Hi, Mark. How you doing?
Great. And that means, of course, Susan dropped some great pearls of wisdom, and she said a couple things when we were talking, and I said, Susan, I think our listeners would love to hear this. So Would love for you to go with either one, Susan. We talked about inches, we talked about scales, just different ways of thinking of the admission process. Share what you want to share. I thought those were some rich conversations.
Well, I'm a big one on visualization. And, I realize not everybody is, their brains aren't necessarily as visual as mine. But I love, especially when, at points in my career when I was teaching people about the college application process, when I was in admissions, then when I was in college counseling, I would always be looking for a way to impact a family's ability to see and understand the process. And, the word holistic means a lot of different things to different colleges. And I think that's been a big step forward in how colleges have chosen both to speak to their process, but also on their websites, unpack how they read and evaluate applications. And truthfully, a tip for the day would be for any family to spend time combing through a college's admissions website, looking for how they describe their admission process and how they read and evaluate applications. Some schools are much more detailed and descriptive than others. I find it has no relation to the size or the public-private or whatever of the college. But I find some are very helpful in teaching about how they engage with an application and how students can think about the evaluation process, how ratings are assigned, kind of how the whole process is quantified in a way from the reader's perspective. Because, as applications are read, this is all about ratings. It's not as subjective as, the reader loves the applicant and is going to pull for them in committee. That ship has sailed. Right now, the ratings on applications, however the colleges choose to assign those academic, personal, fit, interest, whatever matters to that college, those are carrying the decisions forward. So there's a tip right there is go to the website, read it all. I am shocked every day that families just shy away from the websites and they're going with third-party information, which can be interesting, but it's not going to give you that, here I am sitting in the room with the evaluator and understanding how they do that. Johns Hopkins is a great example. If any of you out there want to take a look at how a really great job that a highly selective school shows how they do that. They couldn't be clearer.
You know what, Susan, along those lines, we had a listener that sent an email in about 6 months ago. And I actually ended up using it for a recommended resource, but they were sharing a link to the case studies. You know how schools do their case studies, and they show how they take you through their process of reading a file. And the listener said, I'm getting these from the admissions sections of the application, and
they're actually on the website.
Yeah, and she quoted 3 schools that had up their case studies, like in some cases, like some cases also on YouTube in some cases, but like in some cases it was a full 45 to 60 minute breakdown simulating going through. And I ended up doing a recommended resource on College of Holy Cross because they were one of them. But just to prove your point, like she was finding these in the admissions sections, and there's some gold there. Some schools put up the samples of writing that they find to be a good example of this is an example of good writing. There's a lot of schools that do that. I know Connecticut College, Tufts, Davidson, Johns Hopkins, to name 4 off the top of my head. So yeah, that's a treasure trove. And actually, in listening to you say that, it kind of made me feel like I need to go back as a counselor and do this myself to kind of mine for some nuggets of gold that may be there because the sites, everybody's been upgrading their websites, especially since COVID.
That's right.
But go ahead. You were going to say something about one of your former mentors and an example he used to use.
Yeah. Well, so in a way, what the admissions people are doing on the websites when they describe their admission process, the visual imagery for that for me has always been the jigsaw puzzle, because basically they're showing you what all the pieces of the puzzle look like when they sit down to read an application, and they're trying to show you how they are irregular shapes, how they fit together, how they carry greater and greater meaning as the pieces are connected through a series of ratings. And then at the end, they have a full picture. They have the puzzle put together, at least the pieces that they've been given, right? And that's a story for another time.
Right. They don't know what you don't communicate with them.
Yeah, the pieces are required, but then it's up to the applicant to figure out how to put them together. But the other visual picture that has always meant a lot to me goes way back to my years in liberal arts admissions earlier in my career at Bates College, which was a leader in holistic evaluation and metrics that honored holistic reading, but quantified pieces of the application so that there was reliability across readers and validity in terms of were the measures that the college was using to evaluate an applicant actually holding up over time, were they predicting what the admissions staff felt they were going to predict academically and personally. So that said, my dean used to refer to two images. One was kind of a ruler, a good old fashioned ruler or yardstick. And he would talk about how admissions was a game of inches and not feet. And that has stayed with me all these years, and I've used it because for me, it explains admissions in a way that a lot of families don't understand when their kids are in high school. That at very selective schools, there's not one piece of the application that is a kind of a slam dunk advancing the student from 0 inches to 12 inches. That some pieces of the application carry more weight than others. The ability to do the academic work, for example, has got to be established first, right? But once we do that, then it's all about these small inches, millimeters, centimeters, depending on your scale, right? That then add up and move the student toward the acceptance threshold, whatever that means for that student. So, when a student meets an institutional priority or carries a hook that is quantified in the application, of course, that carries an enormous amount of weight. But then other things, when you think about, the small things that add up cumulatively or don't, recommendations that may be another inch on the scale, or they may not. It may be moot. The college may learn nothing valuable from recommendations or the student's writing. Generally, things aren't subtracted in this visual model. Once in a blue moon, I shouldn't say that they never do, but once in a great while. But generally, it's just a question of like kind of the board game where you're moving. What is it, Parcheesi, or some of those old board games that I love. But you're advancing slowly, in some cases leaps and bounds, and in some cases you're just kind of standing still. But the other visual, and I'll get carried away on this, Mark, but the other, think about the scales of justice. This may mean more to parents than to kids because it's kind of an old-fashioned visual image. But for Law and Order fans, we see the scales of justice every time we watch a Law and Order.
Susan's a big
rerun.
Law and Order fan.
Oh my gosh, I hate to even it. And luckily, they made so many hundreds of episodes.
And they were in New York City, so they'd be your old neighborhoods you'd recognize when you'd watch them.
Well, I recognize many of the neighborhoods. In fact, there have been several episodes where they have found, you know how they always find a body like in the first 3 minutes of the show. In my high school's dumpster alley. So this was in the neighborhood I grew up in. Oh my gosh. And I remember the first time it showed the dumpster alley of French Seminary on East 15th Street. And I'm like, oh my gosh. It was a long time ago, but I remember that dumpster alley. But anyway, it is, you're right. It is, there's a level of familiarity. But anyway, the scales of justice are also, kids may be familiar with that from chemistry class when, you have, and there's a name for that kind of scale. And now I'm totally blanking on it.
It was my worst subject, even that my dad taught chemistry, so I can't help.
Oh, no.
I can't
But,
help.
it looks like a T, right, on either arm of the piece that goes horizontally is something that holds a little platform. And when you're weighing chemical properties, it's part of an experiment, you're using on one side a series of little weights that are standardized. They're ounces or they're, grams. They're usually grams, truthfully. And on the other side is where you're measuring out whatever it is you need, a very precise measurement. Now, this is probably all done digitally now, but I dare say there are still some scales around. Scales of justice, of course, is guilt versus innocence and the process that the courts go through to weigh evidence. And I'm a big fan of that whole imagery. But, as admissions people read in application, there are these very small weights, and some are a little bigger than others, but just like those inches on the yardstick or the ruler, they add up. And some kids get in because they have an enormous, big weight. Maybe they've got the huge weight, and not much else needs to be added to that to tip the scale in the student's
athlete,
favor.
comes to mind. If you're
big institutional priority. But then most kids, and the vast majority of high school applicants in this country, it's a process of those little weights that get added on to the plus side of that scale. And, eventually does the scale tip? Yeah, that decision gets evaluated over and over again in different pools within the applicant reading group. But yes, that's true. And it's why I never want a student who feels that they are, kind of just another generic great student who's tried very hard in high school, been a great citizen, kind of what you refer to often as standard strong, which is that's not backhanded. That's a legit compliment. And I have a lot of respect for kids who've done it all and done it well, but maybe they're not a superstar, or maybe the area in which they've been a star isn't a match for what a particular college is valuing in a big way. But those little weights do add up. They do add up, and all a student can do is their best, and then get some good advice on how to put it all together.
And also how to build a college list so that your best makes you competitive. Because as you go up the selectivity tier, the standard changes because the competition changes.
Right.
There are a lot of really selective schools that a kid can have high grades, really good curriculum, really nice personal qualities, good writing, good recs, and the school would love to have that kid. But then when you go to these really selective schools, it can be different things, but so many times that extracurricular impact reverberates outside of the school community into the much broader community. It's why when I was at Stanford for a week of training, they said, send us kids whose extracurricular contributions are statewide and beyond.
Yeah.
And I get what they're talking about. And I know that sounds cruel. Now, that doesn't mean that they'll never take a kid. I can think of a kid actually that I know that you wouldn't say had that, but he had something else, right? So that doesn't mean that if you don't have that, it's an automatic denial, but it does mean that most of the kids that they're admitting have that kind of extracurricular impact. And when it comes to that piece, which is an important component, in addition to your personal qualities, what impact will you have here and beyond here? A lot of the kids that are competitive in that process have that extracurricular impact that reverberates well outside of their school community to the broader community. Would you agree, Susan?
Absolutely.
I know you're nodding here with me on this. And the reason why I want to say that is it's one of the biggest things I find that leads families to feel a little disillusioned. Like, what could I possibly have done?
Right.
My kids got the scores. They've got the rigor. They did well on AP tests. I'm I can say with a high degree of confidence that those recs were good. The teacher even let me see them. I know they were good, and I know the relationship I have with them. But then they look at what they did, and a lot of it is the same kind of clubs,
Right.
DECA, National Honor Society, Beta, like the same stuff, and just
in school.
Yeah, in school.
Or very local.
In school, this is not to, like you said, Susan, make anybody who's doing that feel bad.
Right.
But it is just to understand a lot of times that isn't competitive at 10 to 15 or 20 schools in the admission process. And I found, like, if people can level set their expectations, it really helps a lot. They may say, I'm going to take a shot at some schools, but boy, does it make a difference when they sort of know the competitive landscape.
Right.
It helps everybody. It helps. They don't feel as disappointed. They actually don't convey to their kid that we're expecting you to get in. And when the kid doesn't feel like the parent expected them to get in, boy, that takes a lot of pressure off the kid. But if the kid sort of felt the parent expected them to get in, that's what magnifies a lot of the stress on the kid. And so I always, when I'm having these conversations, it's always a fine line, because I'm not trying to discourage the overwhelming majority of people who are like me. Like, I would not have made it by that standard.
Right.
I would not have lived up to that. So I'm talking to people like me, hear that, and they think, oh, I don't want them to be discouraged, but I do want them to level set. And especially if they'll adjust that college list, boy, they'll find there's some diamonds in the rough out there, that they can learn to love and realize how amazing. Student I'm working with right now, who a lot of what we said, maybe this would have applied to, and then they tech-oriented student and said, I think maybe we're shooting a little high, and decided to dive into WPI. I'm a WPI fan, Susan.
Oh, me too. Absolutely.
Don't you think they do a lot of really good things with their project-based approach? And
kids love it. The students that went from our school, Mark, that we got, especially kids who were quick to understand that the future of STEM is in group research, teamwork, the shared scholarly and hands-on experience. And that's what grad schools and employers are looking for. It's, hard to beat. The faculty there are so focused on the undergraduates that talk about getting your money's worth.
There are a few schools like there. Clarkson is another one that does a good job with that. Olin, of course, on the very selective side. And then, of course, what's the one in Indiana we used to send a bunch of kids
Rose-Hulman.
Yeah, they do a great job of that as well.
Spectacular.
Yeah,
And Harvey Mudd, I would say, is
yes.
the other one.
Oh, Harvey Mudd.
Now that's
on the high end. But still, they all do this project-based, team-based collaboration. Right. Teachers really teach well. They're not just there to do research. Those kinds of places are diamonds in the rough. Obviously, there was a range of selectivity there,
right,
in the school list. But the point is, like, if families can understand this, and then they can have schools, some of those schools, and once again, we kind of conflating two things here. We talked about both collaboration, project-based learning, and different degrees of selectivity. I want this process to be confidence enhancing. I'm always telling this to my families. I want your kids' confidence to soar through the college process. I don't want it to be debilitated. And part of it is about proper expectation setting. Part of it is about having enough knowledge to build a balanced college list. And then have reasonable expectations. And then there's the execution part. But you can
Right.
execute all you want if your student is not competitive in the pools that they're in. It doesn't matter how amazing that personal statement is or
Yep,
how
that's
good
right.
that teacher rec is. It's just, and that's the piece that I'm trying to use this platform we have here to help people to
Yep.
understand.
And
So
that's the game of inches.
yes, and that's the game of inches.
And parents don't really see that in their own kids because they see the wonderfulness of that person and their potential, which is that's our job as parents, is to elevate our kids every way we can. But
I think it's two things, Susan. Like we're all biased about our kids, so there's a bias there. But I also think that it's hard for people to realize how big that world is out there.
yes,
And like I think even with the bias that parents have toward their kid, if they could ever go be a reader in some of these pools, I think they would readjust expectations. Because they would see, and we're talking of course about the highly rejectives, like pick your term for them, right? Just how extraordinary the kids are. That's why I've always respected the people that talk about respect the competition.
that's
You
wonderful.
know,
Yeah.
Julia likes to always say, I know your kid hung the moon, but other people's kid hung the moon too. Friends, this concludes the first part of Susan Not Just Talking About College Admissions. Hope you'll join us next week for a more protracted and longer and final session.
And now this week's interview with a special guest.
Friends, it's time for the fourth and final part of Lynda Depker's interview with Soup Campbell from Zeemee. And in part 4, Soup talks about the amazing brand partnerships that Zeemee has. Soup explains what the virtual backpack is. Soup explains why Ed Sharon exclusively uses Zeemee. Soup talks about how a company could get a student amazing things for their dorm room without bombarding them with advertising. Soup talks about other new things that are on the horizon for Zeemee. Soup talks about dark mode themes. Soup talks about whether Zeemee will have a desktop version. Soup talks about whether there's any plans for Zeemee to roll out services for alumni or for job searches. Soup talks about the really cool things colleges are doing to help with student orientation, and he mentions several other key areas of the student experience that colleges are experimenting with. Soup gives his advice for students, parents, and college counselors, and you're not going to want to miss it. Listen and enjoy.
Talking about your virtual events, because Zeemee hosts virtual events sometimes, right? I've heard that you had a partnership with Ed Sheeran. Is that true?
Yeah, so this is really cool. Let's touch on this a little bit because I really love this. So one of the new things that's happened within kind of the past year, when you have a social platform that starts to have several million students on a platform, and you start to crack into being number 12 in the App Store, a lot of people come calling and like, hey, what is going on this? What is this thing? Could we be a part of this? We're a brand, we're a company, right? And again, as I mentioned previously, I've talked about how we don't need them. Like we don't need your ad spend. We don't need your revenue like on the platform. So Zeemee is in this real strong position of leverage where we actually now can take a look at and say, hey, are there brands out there? Are there companies? Are there artists that we just feel like could bring value to our students, that want to do something special for our students during, this transition? And so we hired an amazing individual, James Sleeman. He used to work at Chegg and did some amazing things with brand partnerships for Chegg. He's a rock star, and now he's our rock star at Zeemee. But now he coordinates just really amazing brand partnerships that we can have and that we can work with. And we just rolled out the newest feature on Zeemee that I love. Right in the bottom navigation, one of the core components of Zeemee, every student on Zeemee now has their virtual Zeemee backpack. And that is where students can go to week or month to month to get access to great scholarships and deals and incentives. And again, we're doing it that way because, again, once again, the power is in the hands of the student. They don't have to ever look at their backpack if they don't want to, or they can look at it every day and take advantage of the things that we're bringing to them. But yes, Ed Sharon was one of our first major partners. I'm not kidding when I say he is obsessed with, he loves Zeemee. And so, we knew about his North American tour before anyone else because he exclusively wanted Zeemee to be the only platform where he did this really cool contest and gave amazing tickets away for all of his North American tour stops. And he wanted college students to have that. He wanted them, and he wanted to be right there kind of with them on this platform. And so I love that we're going to now be able to, again, if Target came to us and said, we want to be a part of this. So it'll be, well, hey, you could be in the backpack, and why don't you give a crazy awesome deal for students to buy all of their dorm room essentials? Give them a package that they can get there. So it won't be ads all over the place. It'll be like, man, I took a look at my backpack today, and Target's giving us this amazing opportunity to get all the things we need for our dorm. So I'm really excited about that. James has been the one that's really, been the one to kind of lead us in that direction. And it's super exciting to see now the types of companies and brands that we can partner up with.
Yeah, I took a peek into the backpack earlier today, and I saw there was a deal on AirPods, and I was like, that might be interesting. So good stuff. What other new features are on the horizon? Can you break any news right here?
Yeah, so, as far as the roadmap goes, I think really the backpack was the one that's really been the big one that we just rolled out. But I will say we're also at a major transition on the app right now where the chat structure on Zeemee's app, for the past several years is really kind of older technology and a little bit dated. So our engineering team over the past couple of years has been rebuilding chat kind of from the ground up within the app. And so it just needs to listen, young people today have really high expectations. I mean, these are kids that use Discord and Snap and Instagram. And if your chat does not work and is not seamless and smooth and without lags and bugs, they're gonna let you know real quick that you got some things you need to fix. So we've just rolled out where it's in beta right now. So the brand new chat is currently rolled out in beta. But our engineers now have to rebuild a lot of the cool previous features that you could do in chat, pinning messages to the top, dropping polls in the chat. We have a really cool icebreaker feature that allows you to drop in these cool icebreaker type assets into the chat. Some things like that our engineering team's going to be rebuilding. I think like a trivia type component game that now our colleges can, like, when they want to host those fun trivia nights, we've actually made it more into a sophisticated game for them to kind of host trivia. So I think that's some things that are coming on the roadmap, just really cleaning up that experience. And then the one thing that I'm super excited about that is very close, that is about to finally be live on the app, and I know you'll laugh and you'll say, this can't be that big of a deal. We are finally getting ready to roll out dark mode themes on the app. We've never had dark mode. These students roast us every day. They're like, Zeemee, how can we take you serious? Like, you don't even have dark mode, and it's so bright at night. You're like melting my eyes and my screen. So yes, we're finally going to roll out dark mode for all of our students to give them that experience that they expect to have on the app.
They're not being a little dramatic, are they?
Just a little.
A little. Let me ask you, any chance that there will be a desktop version?
Yeah, I think we get asked that a lot. We also get asked that a lot, even from our college partners, right? I mean, they're really busy. It's hard for them to dedicate a lot of time to just be in an app all day with how busy they are. But I think, sometimes people ask me, Soup, who are competitors in this? Like, do you have competitors? Like, who else? Is anybody else really doing this? So really, there's no one else in the higher ed space that has anything like what Zeemee has become. But if we look in the social space, I always see Discord, not as a competitor, but that's a very much a similar type of social community type of platform. And the one thing that Discord has that's amazing is they have that desktop experience that students can utilize. And so I do think at some point that would be valuable, not only for our college partners to be able to do a lot of this right at their desktop when they're working at in their office, but I think our users, our student users, especially those Discord users who are familiar with that, I think they would really enjoy having that desktop version. And so, yes, not there yet, but that has been something mentioned many, many times, and I could definitely see that being a part of the roadmap at some point to roll out a desktop version.
Okay. And one more question beyond the college journey, what about do you foresee something for alumni for after they graduate? Or what about for like job search? Is there a space for that?
100% could see some of that happening. Now, again, you have to think about the timeline here in the evolution of Zeemee. So, really, the app that exists today really has only been around for 5 or 6 years, right? And again, it really didn't have major traction until the last couple, 2 or 3 years. So think about this. We have a lot of current college juniors and seniors that have never heard of Zeemee. This wasn't even a thing. It wasn't on their radar when they were high school seniors. But within these past few years, especially the past couple, again, many of our college partners will have 85, 90% of the incoming class in their community before they arrive on campus. And what we found over the past 2, 3 years, really kind of since COVID, the students, even after they arrive on campus, they want to keep using Zeemee. But there needs to be stuff for them there needs to be value on the app for them to keep using it. I think the backpack is one of the first new things that kind of would make students want to like, well, I'm going to stick around on here because, next month there may be something new, cool I want to check out. So I do think in our roadmap each year, the incoming class gets stickier and stickier for staying on the app. We have colleges that we're partnered with now doing really cool new orientation stuff. The summer before, that's all being done kind of within Zeemee. We're starting to get residential life and student affairs. There's a feature on Zeemee where the colleges showcase all of their on-campus events and hot tips. I could see that feature being enhanced to become the main on-campus tool we use to track participation in events and can help retention and those things. So with that, year over year, at some point, we're going to hit that tipping point where Zeemee's become an app that students have used through their whole college experience. And I think when we get to that point, then we start to see that next phase of, hey, I just graduated from college, but can I keep using Zeemee? Can there be things of value for me to keep using Zeemee? And as you mentioned, that whole connection between, again, we talked about the roommate matching and kind of that friend finding feature within Zeemee. How cool would that be once I get to be a senior in college, that tool kind of works the same way, but I'm tapping into like, this is so cool. This is an alum that was here 3 years ago that's in the same field and career I want to go into. Now we're direct messaging on Zeemee and making that connection and networking. So yes, I think that's a little down the road yet, but I could completely see that happening and that evolution take place over time.
Got it. Well, Soup, I can't thank you enough for your generosity of time. I do have one more question for you, kind of a three-parter, because I'm looking for advice that you have for our students, parents, who are most of our listeners, and then counselors who also are part of our listener audience.
Okay, so let's go with students first. I would tell any student out there the same things that I've been telling my high school senior, but with him, it goes in kind of one ear and out the other because it's coming from dad. I would stress to students that if there's a college or university out there that you're interested in, find those ways to actually really start to engage and connect with them. Whether they've got a TikTok channel or whether that's through their Instagram account or if they're active on Zeemee. I go back to when I was an admission counselor on the college side. Like, I wanted to really know the students who were really, really interested in us. Again, we talked about that demonstrated interest. And so I would tell any of you students out there to know that it can make a difference. Build those connections. Don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to really know who your admission counselor is, and build that connection and that relationship. And then also I would tell you students, don't worry about what's going to happen when those admission decisions come out. I know how stressful it is. I promise you, all of us out there got denied from schools that we applied to. None of us out, maybe got into every school we thought we were going to get into. But I'm telling you, students, right now, no matter where you go, you can make the most amazing experience possible. So find that school that for you is the best fit, that you just know this is for me, this is my home. I love the culture, the vibe, the students here. And then once you're there, make that most amazing experience. It doesn't always have to be, the one dream school that we think everybody out there, is aspiring to be. And you can only be successful if you go to that particular school. So those are some things I would say to students. To parents, oh my goodness. If you've been really trying to support and help your student, as I have, and you have one like I have who's very strong-willed, and remember that to them, you are just mom or dad or grandma or grandpa. And even when you've got all the right answers and you're the expert on these things, some of that's going to just go in one ear and out the other for them. And I would tell you too, it's easy for us as parents to really put added pressure on them. Look, I'm the first one to admit, I want my son to go to what we would say is the best school. And part of that is, am I wanting that for him, or am I wanting that for me to be able to well, my son got admitted here and my daughter is going here. So I would just encourage us parents to remember, look, let's just encourage them. Ultimately, this is their future. Ultimately, this is going to be their education. And let's just be the support they need. I'm telling you, parents, you need to understand how stressful and emotional this transition is for your student. Just support them. Just let them know, hey, you got this. We're going to support you no matter where you go. We're here to help. Let us know what you need. If you need support, just be their support as they go through this, and give them the freedom, the autonomy to feel like they can kind of own this transition as well. So those are some tips for the parents. And then finally, for counselors, I can't say this enough, and you don't hear this enough. I personally, because I did spend time in K-12 teaching, I know what you guys are going through every single day, the workload you have on your shoulders. You don't get the pats on the back you deserve. You don't get the thank yous. You don't get the praise that you deserve. No one is directly connected with these students and a part of this process more than you. And one, I just want to say thank you. I know I and those of us at Zeemee recognize the work that you put in, and how you're supporting these students. And I would just encourage you and remind you, you are making a difference. Even if you're the counselor out there and you feel, I've got 200 students, how could I possibly be making a difference? Or even if you're the IEC, that just you're able to really work with a select group of students. Just know that you're playing a critical, important role in helping these young people make the transition. And know that there's people out here like myself and companies like Zeemee that are always willing to get in the trenches with you as well and support. So if you ever need us, whether it's resources or things that we can help with or do, don't hesitate to reach out and connect, because we want to support your efforts. And ultimately, we're all in this game because our number one care and priority are these students and helping them, make this transition. So keep up the great work. Thankful for all that you do, and always here and willing to help if we can.
Terrific words of wisdom, particularly for the students. Your son sounds much like my daughter when she was going through the process. So God be with you.
Yeah.
Nobody's getting out of here without some fun hot seat questions. So these are questions that we haven't talked about yet. So, Sue, what is your favorite social media app except for Zeemee? What do you spend your time on?
Oh, goodness, that's a good one. And I'm a power user of so many social platforms. Um, I would probably say it's probably a toss up right now between Instagram and TikTok. I mean, I still am just a very power user on those platforms. But if I had to pick one for nostalgia of that's no longer around that I wish
Oh,
that I loved back in the day, if anyone can remember, this might have been back around 2010ish time frame. There was an app that got really popular called Foursquare, where you could check into places and you would become the mayor of that location if you checked in, more than other people. I was obsessed with that and I really miss it. And I wish that still, I took a lot of pride in knowing I was the mayor of certain locations in my local town. And so that's one that I truly miss. But yes, right now it'd probably be Instagram and TikTok. I spend a lot of time on both of those.
got it. Now, I know you travel a lot. So, what is your number one travel tip? What what's the one thing you can't do without or something you always do when you travel?
Oh my goodness. So my number one travel tip is well, there's okay, there's probably a couple, but I'll give you one. When we're talking about so much of my travel involves being at conferences, and spending time at conferences and that kind of professional setting. So I've always said my number one tip for anyone that's going to be traveling and doing the conference thing: comfortable shoes. I know we want to go into these conferences and maybe the shoes we want to wear are very nice because they go with an outfit. I would tell you right now, sacrifice looks and appearance and nice and matching with an outfit over wearing very comfortable shoes. Because when you're in a convention hall space, basically on concrete for hours every day, that's really important. A second one, I would just say, when I travel, I am one of those, and again, maybe as a guy, I can get away with this more, but I never check a bag when I fly. So it has got to fit. Everything I'm going to take, as far as my outfits and everything, it has got to fit in the one little piece of luggage that's allowed to be carry on, which is difficult depending on how many days or where you're going to be for a trip. But that's one of my pieces of advice as well. Like you can save yourself the fear of luggage getting missing or going other places when it's always with you in your possession on the plane. So that's a little tip.
I could not agree more, particularly with the comfortable shoe situation. My high heel days are in the past, and only comfy shoes. So I'm not sure what that says about me. And last, speaking of travel, tell me what's on your bucket list? Because I know you go to a lot of conferences, which all lovely towns, but probably not necessarily on your bucket list as far as recreational travel. Where would that be?
Well, I would love to at some point actually attend a conference that's across the pond. So I would love to attend a conference that's maybe in the UK or something, like, again, maybe as we're trying to make more connections and build relationships with partners or with schools that are in the UK. I think that would be fun to do maybe down the road. But I will say one thing that's a bucket list, not necessarily, but something super exciting that's coming up here. So when you work for a company like Zeemee, a tech company, there's about 30 of us in the company. We all work remote, right? Because when you're building technology, you can really work from anywhere. The last time our company all came together in one of those, off-site or now I guess maybe on-site experiences where we're all together as a team, that was actually back in 2018. And so coming up here in January, for the first time since 2018, our entire team is going to spend about 4 days working together in Cancun. So we're taking the team to Cancun to work, and I assume we'll also have some fun while we're there together. But I have worked with people at Zeemee for 3 or 4 years and been in Zooms with them every single day and never had the opportunity to spend time in person together. So for a bucket list type thing, that would be in that category. Super excited to finally meet in person, spend time with our team, and to be able to do that in a setting in January like Cancun. It doesn't get any better than that.
No, I love those meetings that take place at the pool bar. So enjoy that. All right. Soup, thank you again for your time. You've been most generous. And thank you for giving us really a deep dive on Zeemee and all it can do for students and for the college side. Really appreciate it.
Lynda, thank you so much. I've wanted to do this forever. It's an honor and a privilege to be on the podcast with you. Thank you so much. If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to reach out and let me know.
You bet. Thank you.
On Thursday's episode, Dave's in the saddle, and we will be discussing an article by Liam Knox from Inside Higher Ed entitled Recruiting to Campuses Far, Far Away. Demographic shifts and funding woes have led a diverse and growing array of colleges to hire recruiters who live and work hundreds of miles from campus. Is it worth it? And the article was written pretty recently, November 28th, 2023. Julia will join me for our question from a listener segment to discuss a great question that came in from an anonymous listener who wants to know, does my kid really have to take 4 years of a foreign language to be a competitive applicant for highly selective colleges? And we'll have a final part of my interview with Dan and Mary LaChance as they talk about opportunities for careers in cybersecurity. And I really love this interview because to me it accomplishes three things. Not only do our listeners get to learn about the abundant opportunities in cybersecurity, but they get to see an example of a student that decided to do two things. One, not assume that if a school admits more kids than it denies, that it can't be top tier. And secondly, to focus on your field and program of study and say, how strong is the actual field and program I'm studying? And what is the reputation of that program, both in grad school world as well as in the job market, rather than just look at other extraneous sources. And then finally, Lisa and Lynda will discuss Illinois Institute of Technology for a college spotlight. They started that last Thursday, and this will be part 2 of 2. And friends, I close by sharing something with you that is at the bottom of every one of my emails. Some of you have corresponded with me via email, and a few have actually even commented on this. And I keep it there, and I've had it there at the bottom of my emails now for, I don't know, more than 7 years, maybe even 9, because it personally inspires me every time I read it. You know, the quote is attributed to a guy named Zig Ziglar, but it simply says this: your attitude, not your aptitude, will determine your altitude. See you on Monday, friends. And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. If you find this podcast helpful, please follow us and you'll get every single episode as soon as it is released. If you're interested, there are a few ways you can really support our podcast. You can click the share button and send it to your friends and acquaintances. You can help us pay our staff and our expenses by donating on our website. You can write a review for us on Apple or Spotify. I'm the producer of the podcast, but we have a fantastic team of 15. Shout out to our co-host, Dr. Lisa Ruff, Dr. David Williams, Lynda Depker, Susan Tree, Vince Garcia, and Julia Esquivel. And to our substitute co-host, Sylvia Borgo. Our sensational sound engineer is Nemanja Motvich. Our amazing music is from Victor Allen Weeks. Marketing designs are from Kimberly Blass. Lily Parikh manages our Instagram. Our image editor is Talha Khan. Joyce Ducker does our website episode updates. And our webmaster is Stalianos Dimitriou. And if you want to have a coaching session with Lisa, Lynda, or me, just text me at 404-664-4340. If you have a question you want us to answer, or if you have a recommended resource or article you think we should discuss, just send it to questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. Our favorite method is for you to record your own voice at speakpipe.com/YCBK. By the way, check out our website, where you'll find lots of content that is not on any podcast app. Our website is yourcollegeboundkid.com. If you want to learn about other hot admissions topics, follow us on Twitter at YCBK Podcasts. We think of you as our listening family, and we look forward to meeting again with you every single Monday and Thursday.